How are you? How are you doing, Tree? It's good to see
Uh,
you.
Good to see you too. I'm really happy to have this conversation with you.
Same. It's weird because I've seen you, but I haven't spoken to you at length. But it's just like one of those modern things, isn't it? You see someone, then you speak to them over the internet, and then you might see them later. So it's just like one of those things.
Totally. I know what you mean. It's the
I would,
postmodern world.
yeah, absolutely. I would have said something to you like, "Oh, it's cool to have met you out of the blue," but now I believe in what Barbara Malsiniak called the Great Fiduciary or the Order of Chance. So instead, I would just say, "It's nice to meet you at this time." Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Tell me about your writing journey. When did you start writing and why?
When did I start writing? I would say it went back a long time ago when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I was 15, and I think it was like the summer of 1986 or something like that. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
telling my um I got inspired because I've always done dream work and worked with dreams and things like that. I got inspired to write a science fiction novel
Oh, wow.
at 15, and I started writing it. And it was over that summer, and all my friends had gone away to, on holidays and things like that. My folks could never afford holidays. We were always like kind of make do with yourself, entertain yourself over the summer. And so I started writing this science fiction novel. And as I was writing it, I got so immersed in it, I kind of like ended up way up there in this like zone of like what is the nature of reality, and like I had to kind of like take a break from it. I literally had to like put it aside. It was like I've gotten too immersed in this right now. I think I need to like um go and be a normal 15-year-old for a bit.
Yeah.
um I started my writing journey really then. And then like I never finished that, which I will do that. I will finish that novel one day. And then after that, I wrote like a kid's book. When I was like 17, I wrote a kid's book.
Mm.
Um, it was about on a journey into um, understanding prejudice, like to teach kids not to be prejudiced, basically,
Yeah.
or racist, or prejudiced. But that never got published. But I still have a copy of it. It's right here in
Oh,
my.
brilliant.
And so I started my writing journey when I was a teenager, and then I always kind of like wrote for myself. And then it wasn't until my 40s that I started getting published.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Um, it just goes to show never give up, doesn't it?
Yeah, never give up. Like if it's within you, you feel like you have a story within you, or you have something to say, like just keep going. Really. Yeah.
Mm,
Keep
absolutely. Could you tell me about your time in Palestine and how you came to go there? Did you think, I just fancy going there, or what was it that brought you there?
So I've always been an activist of sorts since I was a teenager. One of the first um causes that really was true to my heart was the Free South Africa cause, and the South African apartheid. And I got interested in all that basically through music, through rock and roll, because I really, I'm a musician, and there was a lot of bands at that time that supported Free South Africa. And so that initially was my, journey into activism. And then I joined Amnesty International, and I was very concerned with, like freedom for people who were oppressed. And it was a, issue very dear to my heart. And all types of oppression, not just like colonialist oppression, but also oppression of people's, sexuality, and women being oppressed, feminism and all these sort of things. So that was kind of like the backbone of my journey into
Mm.
activism. And I met my partner in 1994, and we're like life partners. We've been together for 30 years, and he's also, he's very much involved in activism. So then we found like that was very complimentary. So we found ourselves at a lot of different, supporting a lot of different causes throughout the 90s and the 2000s. Palestine, the freedom for Palestine has always been an interest for a cause. And so always aligned in solidarity with the plight of free Palestine under occupation. And so in 2016, my partner and I decided that we would like to actually go there and be there for ourselves to help with the Palestinian cause, to raise funds. We raise funds for MAP, Medical Aid for Palestinians. But also in going there, we wanted to understand more clearly and succinctly the reality of the day-to-day of the Palestinian people. And it was an eye-opener. It was like the best education possible, because, you know, we don't really get much information from mainstream news or media or about the situation. We always hear that, oh, it's this age-old like religious conflict that goes back since, you know, thousands of years. You know, it gets kind of pushed aside and like sort of like
They're at it again. The religious ones are at it again, sort of thing.
Yeah, misinformation. And so going there really helped define the reality of the situation for my partner and I. So we went over there in 2016. We ran the Palestinian Marathon. So we trained for that and ran the marathon and raised funds for MAPS. So in our time there, we were there for like a week. We stayed with a Palestinian family, which was brilliant. And we're still in like, you know, constant contact with them. And in staying with them, we were really able to see the reality of the situation over there in the day-to-day. The restriction to movement, like having to have like checkpoints everywhere, and not being able to, you know, go around the corner to a different neighborhood to visit family members without some kind of permit.
It's like being in prison.
It absolutely is. And then I got to tell you, the checkpoints were really intimidating, you know, because we would arrive at checkpoints and there would be, you know, a 17-year-old kid behind a semi-automatic weapon with, you know, right on the gun pointing right at you as you're sitting in there in the car. And I'm thinking, damn, if this kid sneezes, my head's blown off. Like it was really intimidating, to be honest, to be under that kind of armored control. And of course, the looming wall, not to mention how that psychological effect of division and the watchtowers with constant guns on you, and you know, like the bullets on the ground everywhere, or gas canisters. And then in the evenings, having to pull down the shutters of like all the houses, the Palestinian houses, having these roll down shutters to kind of lock yourself in every night when sun goes down, because you don't know when, you know, the IDF will come around and just target your house for just to intimidate you, just to shoot at it, or to douse it in swamp water, which they do too, which is this really nasty sewage water that they douse houses with. So your house basically smells like shit, like, and then, you know, it affects the whole, you know, neighborhood and the area, and lots of bullying and whatnot. So that was an eye-opener. Also, another eye-opener was the water restrictions, which I didn't know about the water restrictions, even though having supported this cause. Being there, you realize just the limitation to water that Palestinian homes have. And so each Palestinian home has like a water tank on the roof, and that water tank holds water, but the water is controlled by the Israeli government. So what happens is, arbitrarily, you know, the Israeli government can decide to turn it off, you know, out of punishment. Sometimes it's random, sometimes it's just turned off. And so with that in mind, Palestinian families very frugally conserve the energy or the water that they have on the roofs of their house in the water tank. So when we stayed there, they said, oh, if it's okay, if you could just take like a 30-second, 1-minute shower, because we don't know when, you know, how much we're going to have left, or if it's going to be cut off. It could be a month we don't have water, you know, that's their reality. And as we were driving around too, our host, he he mentioned, he's like, you know, you can visually tell the difference between an Israeli home and a Palestinian home, because the Palestinian homes have the water tanks and the Israeli homes don't, because they have free water, they have flowing water. So that in itself felt like really harrowing and really wrong, and a violation of human rights, because water is life. And as human
Yeah, I
beings,
know. I was thinking that. Yeah.
it's just unbelievable. If it was really sinister, to be honest. And it was also sinister to be able to visually identify a Palestinian home and an Israeli home. So you were also visually targeted, like, okay, those are the Palestinians because they have the water tanks. And so it was just really horrible to see that, and to be there with a family with a young child, to have to experience that. And we also experienced the food rationing too, which a lot of people don't realize, that there's a limitation with what you can get over there, and it's
Yeah, I heard
controlled
about that.
by the Israeli government.
Coriander, random stuff.
Random stuff you can't get, and to be honest, like literally, like rotting food, like
Yeah,
literally. And
it's punitive, isn't it? It's humiliating. Um, I read your post about staying in Palestine, and you know, sometimes you get people ask, well, where is Palestine? And it made me think, in a sense, Palestine is the Palestinian people. That's what it made me think. I mean, I know it is a place and it should be a place, but it also made me think Palestine is the Palestinian people.
Palestine is the Palestinian people, yes. It is also the land in which was called Palestine
Yeah,
before colonialism happened. So, and it is a defined area that has been being shrunken away because of the occupation. And, you know, the settlers moving into these areas, which are inhabited by Palestinian people and forced out. And while I was there, I saw the demolition of Palestinian homes by Israeli settlers. I took
yeah.
photos. I witnessed the bulldozers. I saw it happen with my own eyes, and it's
You
absolutely
can't unsee it, can you? Some things in life you can't unsee.
cannot unsee it.
I hope you understand where I'm coming from when I say I've been having this like mystical reawakening, of which was unasked for in a large part by me. But anyway, 3 or 4 years through this mystical journey of mine, which is at times brutal, at times ecstatic, um, I'm sort of in communication with what the Egyptians would call Carr, like the inner voice. Um, and one of my things was, I said to it, what are we going to do about these wars? What are we going to do about these situations that we're in? And one of the things it said was, you need to confront the darkness in your own heart, which is true, and is the way that it is the way that they see it, but it is also so irritating and unhelpful. And it made me laugh, and it's just, I was just wondering, what do you think?
I think that's pretty spot on. I mean, from lots of different points of view, we can look at it through 3 points of view. We can look at it from a psychological point of view, um, a mystical point of view, and also a scientific point of view. To move into the darkness is really important, to pull the darkness, the root of the darkness, out into the light, to transform. And the root of darkness we can look at through those three lenses, the three lenses of psychology, mysticism, and biology. So I think the darkness in psychology would be, you know, called the shadow. In Jungian psychology, it's called the
Yeah,
shadow. And the shadow is where we hold our wounded and repressed aspects of ourselves. And we all have a shadow within us, and society has a collective shadow as well. And the shadow is all of the, you know, all the nastiness that might be there, that isn't serving the greater good. Now it holds our wounds and our traumas. And in Jungian psychology, what you want to do is move that dark content up to the light, to review, to let it go, to integrate, and to, you know, become a more balanced person and not repeat the darkness. So, you know, Jung once said, you know, we don't become enlightened by imagining beings or angels of light. We become enlightened by going into the darkness and bringing it up out of the light, like by transmuting it and changing the behavior, changing the darkness. That's the psychological perspective. Now, in a mystical perspective, we can see it as, the darkness, like from Carr, the Carr perspective, the Egyptian perspective. It's like, ooh, what is that? And how do we move out of that? And you look at ancient Egyptian cosmology, it's all about the life, death, rebirth cycle. So it's about bringing it into this transmutation. So you're taking that darkness out of, death into life. It rebirths itself. And then you can look at it from a biological or scientific perspective. We can look at it through epigenetics. We carry the traumas as a chemical mark on our DNA that's passed down from generation to generation. And we see this, we're carrying the traumas, the ancestral traumas from our ancestors through into this present moment. So if we look at the ancestral traumas that are happening in the Middle East, it's murder creates more murder, pain creates pain, oppression creates more oppression. And this is the collective trauma that we not only have in the Middle East, but we have it in all the places where we've had oppression, where we've had colonialism, where we've had genocide. We see that it's like history repeats itself. So it'll repeat itself. That trauma will repeat itself until we are ready to the light and say, this is wrong. We need to stop the atrocities. We need to heal. We're not giving our chance to heal over these thousands of years of bad behavior. So those are my perspectives on the darkness and the three different ways you can look at it.
I was going to say it seems in a way that it's hard to deal with the Palestinian issue in a sense, because we're dealing with people that honestly seem to be existing in different realities. Like if I try and have a conversation with a pro-Israeli groups or anything like that, it's just, it's a different reality. It's a whole different story. It's like I'm talking about, a different story. So yeah, I was just wondering how to reconcile different realities.
It's very difficult with different realities because these things go deep, deep, deep into conditioning. And, it's illusory. It's like we can really see a different reality from what we're shown on television or media, what we're taught in school. There's loads of studies around this, conditioning.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And where can we meet someone, where can we meet them within their deep conditioning? Now, it's about, I think, moving into the concept of the greater good, into the concept of humanity held through a space of compassion, empathy, and equality. Now, if an ideology pits a person against another person and says they are lesser, they are animal people, they are not human, or they're lesser than human, and they deserve pain, then I would say that ideology is not rooted in the collective of good and equality and love and compassion for all. It is dangerous. It is dangerous. And it always comes back to the ethical compassion and humanity of all things. Yeah. And I think that's the only place I can meet someone who's supporting an ideology that condones genocide. You just have to try to appeal to their humanity and their heart. Yeah. And if you can't get through to that humanity and that heart to say, that's wrong. No, people should not be murdered. Babies should not be murdered. Innocent people should not be murdered. Then I don't know how you can reach a person like that. Like, I don't know. They just will have to.
It's a hard one. Yeah, it's a
hard one.
Yeah. The Israel Project seems to me in part to be a way to express white nationalism where it's otherwise suppressed. And sometimes I think, what are we going to do about I thought to myself, if there was a parade in my community, like a Buddhist parade or a Hindu parade or a Sikh parade, or it was, we always used to go to Chinese New Year as kids. And when I lived in Brighton, I'd say to my kids, "Oh, come on, kids, let's get ready. There's something great going on in town." But if there was a white nationalist parade in my town, I'd be drawing my curtains and, you know. And I think, well, actually, why should that be the case? It's just to do with association, past experience, things like that. But if there is no way to say I'm proud of being English or whatever, it's gonna become a worse thing. It's gonna become, so I just wonder if we need to change the way we think about certain things, because suppression leads to even darker things.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think, it's a good point that you bring up white nationalism, or, this concept of white supremacy through, what we're witnessing in the Middle East. Because if you to distill everything down to, the base note of what is happening there, it is imperialistic colonization that's happening there. It is rooted in the Balfour Agreement with England, so it's
Oh, what an
already
arsehole, that guy.
it's all rooted in that.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you want to understand something, you need to distill it down to the base note origins. And so the origins of what we're seeing now is it's kind of built around a colonialist mentality, which is, it's Western, it is white, it's British, it is, and Britain's got, so many examples of colonization all over around the world. This is just another example of that happening. And so it's dangerous in that sense too, because rooted in that is no room really for those who are not white. There is no there it's just a project that is going to be rooted in this bias.
I feel like the left is often accused of suspension of reality at the expense of ideology, but this, and it's framed as a uniquely left issue, but I feel like the Israel Project is an example of the suspension of reality on the part of the right. It's a wrong outlook to think that there is no limit to the amount of violence that can occur in the execution of this project. Like, we have no, it doesn't matter, 10 billion, 10 million, like, it doesn't matter how many people suffer. It's a 0 point sort of sum when you think, the amount of suffering doesn't matter as long as this project is fulfilled.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're seeing the blatant and like the hubris really of it unfolding now. We're 122 days into a genocide with a lot of traction around a ceasefire, a lot of traction around it going to international courts, the UN having an opinion about it, the International Court of Justice having an opinion about it. And still, that's not enough for this to stop. There's something drastically psychologically wrong with that. And that's why I use the word hubris, because hubris is just like at all means necessary, It's like, it's just pushing even forward. Like, really, where is this going? It sets a very dangerous precedent around, the cost of completing a project at the cost of innocent human lives being
Yeah,
exterminated.
yeah, and we don't know what the cost is. The cost is, we don't know what the cost is. It could be anything, You wouldn't go and buy a house and think, I'll pay anything, I'll do anything for it. Do you know what I mean? It's, you've got to know what you're paying for a project.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the powers that be are willing to pay those prices because that all means
Yeah,
necessary. And
yeah.
this is what we're meant to sit with as people who are, watching it all unfold. That's world changing.
I wonder what we're going to do, because Gaza's been demolished. So, you know, even if, I mean, obviously I want the ceasefire, but I feel like they've taken it in a direction where they've caused so much destruction that they've made the, you know, they've changed the landscape of the whole situation. So I'm not
Oh,
sure what's going to happen.
exactly. I read something yesterday. It's going to take to 2092 if
Yeah, I
if
saw that. Yeah,
they're able to get back, even if they're able to get back to rebuild, even if they're able to find the funds to do that, like 2092, like what is that? You know,
I
like
know. It's
it's been obliterated. The amount of bombs that they dropped, the amount of, and it's not just the bombs, it's like snipers, it's things on the ground, war
yeah,
crime after war crime after war crime, and the whole withholding of funds and aid and help. It's like absolutely unprecedented what we're seeing. But this is world changing. People cannot sit by and forget this. This will gain traction and movement where hopefully people will rise up and stand up against these horrible injustices against humanity, and and change the way we do things moving forward. Hopefully, as a collective, we can pull together and hopefully bring about positive change. But sometimes it's really it's very grief stricken because you can
it's
feel like
overwhelming.
overwhelming. Like, what can we do? You know, like we're they have all the guns.
In terms of witchcraft, I used to be at the point where I was like, this is really interesting, but it's a shame it's not real. And now I'm at the point of, it's real and let's hurry up and execute it. So I was just wondering, you know, how did you get into it? And what do you think about the idea of real? You know, are we saying like abracadabra? You know, are we turning a cat into a dog? You know, what how do you see it?
Well, I've always been interested in all things esoteric and just basically how the nature of reality works, ever since I was a kid, and got into the esoteric stuff when I was a teenager. And mostly because, you know, it helped to define mystical experiences I was having, psychic dreams, visions, and things that felt mysterious. And to me, that felt like the most interesting and plausible cosmology. Mostly because I think and feel that magic and science are kind of they overlap in a lot of ways. So science is like being able to observe the universe, take notes, take empirical data. It's the observation of the universe and, you know, trying to work out what it's all about. And magic is the participation in the universe, and it's exploring and saying, I can work within this and do something, affect change. So it's like the path of the mystic is kind of like being very open to possibility. And so in my role as a magical person, or how I'm rolling in life, is I see that I have one foot in firmly locked in each zone. So I have one foot really in the material in science and one foot in the mystic, with possibility and willing to explore. And so that's the kind of foundation I roll in when it comes to all things magical cosmology. And I do feel that there's more to this world, this reality, the universe, than we can ever possibly imagine. And so part of that is accepting that reality is far weirder than we can even fathom. And
Yeah,
we, through our will and intention, can affect change through
yeah,
understanding that there are universal forces, just like there are in science, that we can work with, and we can affect change from
yeah.
rituals, spell casting to intentions. This is kind of the concept.
I read that you did lucid dreaming, and I was wondering whether you think there's a danger of the inception effect, like you feel like you might still be in a dream, or um, you know, you lose touch with reality sort of thing.
So with lucid dreaming, definitely you can feel like the reality that you're experiencing within the dream is more real than
Yeah.
your waking reality. And often, sometimes I've had lucid dreams where I wake up and I'm like, what is reality? That reality in the dream felt more real than this reality. But I don't think that the Inception effect where you get lost and
Oh,
confused.
not like fully the film, because that would be crazy. But I don't know, just that would be amazing. But just,
But
just being a bit out of touch with reality.
yeah, being out of touch with reality. I think probably not. Like I've lucid dreamed for like so long and have had many lucid dreams where the thing is the lucid dream itself, it doesn't last. It's not like it's lasting for a very long time to the point where you become really disconnected and immersed in some slightly different reality and waking up, and then you feel like it affects your, you know, your sense of what is real and what isn't, because they are so fleeting in a sense. Like you do eventually wake up from that kind of dream. I think actually it has the opposite effect. I think that lucid dreaming as a practice can make you live better. Your waking time and your waking reality is more richly connected and more lived. You're more present, you're more aware, and you realize that effectively all of this is kind of a dream, like if you think about it, a lot of the mystical traditions see life itself as kind of like we are in God's dream, so to speak. The
Yeah.
Buddhists call it illusion. We're in an illusory state. And then, which helps with a mindful, lucid living practice where every
Mm.
moment counts. You're
I love
here and
that.
you're
Yeah.
like, you make it count. So I think it actually has the opposite effect. It makes you live more connected, more lucidly.
Do you feel like you are at all a conspiratorially minded person? Because I know I am. Just in terms of like aliens or, whatever. I know people think that 2024 is going to be either the second coming of Christ is a popular one, or Project Bluebeam, where they try and project whatever. I don't know. Is that your sort of thing? Do you buy into anything like that?
I've never been into conspiracies. I don't know what Project Bluebeam is. I'm going to look that up. And as for the
It's a
second
good
coming,
one.
as for the second coming of Christ, like I grew up in America, so like every year was like
Every day is
Christ.
the second coming of Christ.
So I was like, oh, Christ is coming back any minute now. It was always like the rapture is coming and all. So I know about all of that because that's a very American kind of thing.
Mm.
I've never been conspiracy minded. I feel like um uh I'm more fascinated with the nature of reality. I'm more fascinated with the bigger picture. I'm more fascinated with the mystical exploration. I think I'm more fascinated with that than anything that's conspiracy based. I see conspiracies too as um, interesting, psychologically very interesting. Like I have thought about why are there conspiracies and why do people get drawn into conspiracies? I am very interested in the fact that most conspiracies are rooted in fear. So I do
Yeah.
find that interesting that people are drawn towards something that is that is fear-based, but it's almost like this interesting feedback loop of being drawn to it because it's the worst case scenario and it's like scary or there's a fearful, but there's also a tinge of wanting to understand like how everything works and having a sense of control over the real reality of what's going on. And so I understand why people might get drawn into conspiracy because it does make you feel like you can connect the dots between things and go, well, that's why that's happening. And it makes me feel in control of my version of the world. So it can make a person feel safe, perhaps within the
Mm.
fear, but it almost kind of is an oxymoron because it's based in
That's a
fear.
very good point. Yeah, I didn't think about it. That's a very good point, to be honest. What do you think is going on with this alien stuff? Because it's more and more dominating, and with technology, it seems like we've captured so much of it. What is it? What's going on?
I have sat with it before and just thought to myself, like, yeah, what are the probabilities of extraterrestrial life? And if I think about it from, a probability factor and, just based like on numbers, on math, like the probabilities are probably pretty great since we live in a universe that's so vast
Yeah,
that,
absolutely. Yeah.
it's obviously the chances of life on other planets, like, come on, it's got to be there, right? So I do think that there's probably, probability wise, yeah, there probably are extraterrestrials. But I do think too, I have this idea that, we live on a planet, a biosystem, an ecosystem that is really diverse, and there's loads of species that we have not even identified yet. And there's a whole underwater like world
Yeah,
that we don't
absolutely. Yeah.
even know what's going on there. And even also the world underground, like the cave work
Yes,
system.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so from my point of view, it's like if they did find some kind of like little alien body somewhere, like little alien life form, and you do see the images of these grays and like these alien bodies, they look like hominids, they look like they're based on like a human kind of structure.
Yeah.
So in my kind of like rational thinking, I'm like, well, these little hominids, grays or whatever, they're based on a human structure, then they're probably from this ecosystem in some kind of way, maybe evolutionary way. These are little, beings that evolved alongside us in a different way, and perhaps they're more about being they live under the earth or something, like.
Yeah, I feel like that. I feel like maybe it's not coming from out there. Maybe it's coming from round here somewhere. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
so
yeah,
and that lines up with lots of folklore and myth
absolutely.
around
Yeah.
little people, elves, gnomes, like we have in every culture, there is folklore around little people, little creatures, little beings. So I mean, my personal kind of just, playing around with the idea, I would tend to lean towards, if there is these kind of strange little alien creatures, are probably actually more from here than they are maybe from something else. I also
Yeah.
played around with the theory when I was younger that maybe like, these are because of these UFOs, they kind of appear out of nowhere and then they go away, and like, well, maybe it's like some sort of time traveling thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's so many different explanations, isn't there, of what it could be. Um, I know you're American. I another random question. I was just wondering whether you'd ever had any experiences with, Bigfoot or the dog man or anything. And I only ask because that's like one of my little micro focuses at the moment, and it seems to be these things in America. I mean, I haven't read any accounts of them in the UK. Have you ever experienced anything like that? Were you in the country more or yeah?
That's so funny that you bring this up, because, well, not me personally experienced it, but my older siblings. So I grew up in the States and also Canada too. So back and forth between the two countries. And so at one point, my family was living in Canada, and my older siblings experienced something in the woods, um, which they came running back from with a group of kids, absolutely like terrified and shocked. So their experience, which was in northern Canada at the time, so this is like remote, like proper like forests, and there was a trail and whatnot. And they were all out with like family, friends, kids out on the trail. And as they were walking out on the trail, they smelt something really terrible. And they thought that
Oh,
some
you know what? This is so common when people say smelt something terrible. It's one of the hallmarks of this thing. Anyway, carry
Yeah.
on.
They were like, they're like, oh man, who farted? Like, oh, that's the worst. Like they thought someone, passed some serious, sinister, like eye-watering gas, right? That was the first thing. And they're like, smelly. And they kept walking. And as they walked, they're like, oh, that's disgusting. And one of them turned around and screamed. So they all turned around, and on the path, like behind them, walking behind them, was a creature that was standing on 2 feet. And they said its fur was reddish brown. So it wasn't brown, it was like reddish brown. And it was about 7 feet tall. Well, they're kids, so who knows, maybe they're exaggerating, but they said it was really tall. Had a face, and it was long hair on the face. And it was like just standing there, standing there watching, and they freaked and they all ran back to the cabin. And so we were younger kids. I was with my parents and the other younger kids, and they all came back as a group. Oh my God, like they were visibly,
Was it more
truthfully,
like an ape or more like a dog?
or like a kind of apey looking thing.
Yeah.
So one of my older sister, good at drawing, drew it.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
And, you know, classic Sasquatch looking, like Bigfoot looking. And also they were trying to describe, well, how tall? And we were at the doorway, and I remember my dad going, well, see this doorway here, whereabouts on the doorway was the creature? And it was pretty tall, it was past the doorway. And all his kids had seen bears before. In that area, it's black bears. And so, and you know, they were like, it wasn't a bear. They were like, it wasn't a bear. And so this became like this legendary story within my family, and also this other family's family. And my mom, like this, you know, this is like became, you know, part of our story as a family, was this experience. And so my mom was really cool. She made like a little kids book that she hand drawn and told the story.
Oh, wow. That's
Us
nice.
kids. And she would read the story to us at night with this little homemade book. And it was super cool because this was, she did this before any of the Disney films, before like Harry and the Hendersons, before any kind of like TV shows or anything about Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And so, you know, I totally believe my siblings that they saw something. And in fact, now there is a documentary on that whole area of Canada of Bigfoot sightings in that area. So, you know, I'm of the opinion of course, there's probably creatures that we have not identified that are quite reclusive, intelligent creatures that don't make themselves known to humans. They stay away. Perhaps they live in cave.
I know that there's a story about Saint Christopher, that he was a cynocephaly, which is a kind of like a dog man. And I know that in some of the older drawings of Saint Christopher, he's shown as like a werewolf kind of creature. And yeah, I know that there was letters, you know, what we think of as accurate historical accounts of, you know, Christian missionaries writing to each other and saying, what are we going to do about the dogmen? You know, do they have souls? And apparently, you know, they ate meat, they didn't wash, but they anointed themselves in oils. And I don't know, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. So I don't know.
Oh, that's super interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that about those Christian missionaries. I do know about other sort of documentations, especially the First Nations people in Canada, especially on the West Coast. Lots of different sightings and written within their lore of, you know, I think they have an indigenous name for the Bigfoot or whatnot. But there's lots of different stories that people say, yeah, that, you know, they exist and they're part of it. And
How did you become a death doula, and what does one do?
I became a death doula. It was really like a calling. It was like a long road into the moment where I came into clarity, and I was like, I should be doing this kind of work. And I think it goes all the way back to when I was a kid. I had a near-death experience at 4 years old, which I think really set me up for being able
You
to
know what?
comfortably.
They are incredible near-death experiences. I could spend hours just talking to you about those. Like, could you just briefly summarize it?
Yeah, no, I'll just briefly summarize. So like I was like 4 years old and living in the States at the time. And I was on a beach with my family in South Carolina. And I was just playing out collecting shells out on the beach away from the water. But a sneaker wave came in, like, so like a really quick, like tide came in, just like really quick. It came in and just like, all of a sudden I was just like immersed in water and pulled out to the ocean. And so like really pulled out fast. And I was trying to grab hold of like the dock. There was like the legs of the dock, and I was trying to grab hold of that. I couldn't, it was just ripping me out. And the dock had like barnacles on it. So my hands were all shredded and bleeding from trying to grapple. And so as was being pulled out, it was just like, okay, you know, drowning basically. And yeah, experienced a near-death experience of basically just letting go of everything, feeling the disassociated feeling of reality, a boundary dissolving kind of oneness, and a piece of like my little life 4 years flashed before my eyes. I felt like deep love for my parents and a real concern for them, a concern that they were never going to find my body. And I was kind of thinking more about them than even myself at that point. And just like a calm and an acceptance, and just like yeah, just this really defined moment of letting go of my life, letting go of the story. And but then my dad had seen this happen, so he ran out and he saved me and rescued me. And when he brought me to the shore, he put on my jumper, my favorite jumper, which was like this orange sweat top. And then he proceeded to take a photo of me, which was really weird. And when I was older, as a teenager, I asked him, because the photos in our family album, and I was like, it always reminded me of like, oh, I just nearly died. And I said, why did you take a photo of me at that moment? And he said, for a few reasons. He wanted to kind of cheer me up and distract, because I was just like completely stunned. But then he said, your eyes changed, and I wanted to capture the way your eyes
Oh,
looked.
wow.
I'll
That's
show you
amazing.
so I keep this as a reminder that I looked into the
Oh,
face of
bless
death.
you.
My
Yeah.
eyes are completely black.
Yeah. Wow. That's really blooming hell. Yeah. They
It
really
was,
are. Do you know what? It just makes me think there's stranger things in heaven and earth, Horatio. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Wow.
yeah. So he said my eyes changed. He said it looked, looks like I'm in the
What do
look
you
at the,
mean, the actual pupil or the white part, all of it?
well, it's strange because if you look at the image, it's
It looks like
like
it's fully black.
we're all black. And it's like I looked into the I looked into the face of death. And so I mean, I think my path to the death doula work all started then, really,
Yeah, because
because
people come back with gifts sometimes, so perhaps, yeah.
yeah, so I think it gave me a place of feeling comfortable around death and not afraid of it. A few years after that photo was taken, like 3 years later, my grandfather died. And I was really like, I felt very calm about his death. And I just sort of understood, well, death is just, you just go into this other zone, this other dream. And I didn't feel like I understood it. Like when my mom was explaining that my grandpa died, I kind of understood where he was effectively.
Hmm.
I was really comfortable even at the wake, at the funeral. It was an open casket, and I was just like, put my little hand in there and held my grandpa's hand, like,
Did your parents feel like you were a changed child, or did they think, what's up with our child? She seems so accepting, or you know.
I don't know. I should ask my parents about that actually, because I think they were just, you know how parents are. They sometimes they're so busy in their world
Yeah,
and life.
yeah.
Um, but from that point onwards, like, in my teen years, I held space for my best friend at the time. Her dad was dying of cancer at home. And I felt really like just really there and present for her. And even at the funeral, I just felt like okay in those zones.
Mm.
As a young teenager moving through my teenage years, like whenever there was a funeral to go to, my mom and my grandma would always go to funerals. And I said, can I come with you? Can I come with you? I felt really drawn towards that. So I've been to tons of wakes and funerals, and even for people I didn't even really know, like, because I wanted to be around this very human experience of death. I felt very comfortable. It wasn't like a morbid thing. It just felt like that was my zone.
Mm.
And then as my life progressed, I started getting these crazy synchronicities when I was like starting at 17 years old, all the way through my life, where I happened to be out in, walking around in public, catching a train, going to the grocery store, in a mall, where I happened to be there right when a person like collapses or falls or gets hit by a car, or has a heart attack, or is having an epileptic seizure, and they're literally, it's happening like I'm there, they fall down, I'm the first to help them. This happens like at least 4 or 5 times a year. I'm not kidding. To the point where it's almost like so uncanny. To like, my friends were also commenting, every time we go out with you, there's like something goes down, like a person like is in an
That's
accident.
incredible, though. You obviously have a gift. You obviously have been touched by, you know, natural forces, and you have a gift and you have a purpose.
Well, I thought it was some weird curse, like it was me. I was cursing people every time I go near people. Someone trips and falls, like it's crazy, right? How much it happens, and to a point where finally, this is how I got into the death doula stuff. It happened on Broadway Market in London on a sunny October afternoon or morning, and I was walking in Broadway Market, and it happened. It happened where this man was collapsed. I was there to help him, and he was having a cardiac arrest, and he died in my arms in the market,
Wow,
as we
that's incredible.
save his life. And so I'm just trying to summarize it really quickly. It was at that point where I said, what is going on? This happens so much to me that I need to work it out. So I asked my dreams, because I do a lot of dream work. Can you, in the universe, can you gotta help me out here? I'm getting a complex. I think, am I cursing people? Right? And I went to sleep, and when I woke up the next morning, I had a quick succession of all the times in my life where I've been there when someone's been in need on the verge of death and helping them. And I felt like I had this vision of all of them happening, and then this sort of slap in the face, and the universe saying, wake up, this is what you're meant to be doing. Like you're falling into these roles because that's your calling. You're meant to be there for people who are afraid on the threshold of death in order to help them. And I was like, what is that job? Like, I'm not a paramedic. That's not a paramedic. And I was like, I'm there. I've always been there emotionally because I'm holding their hand. I'm like, just look into my eyes, breathe with me. The help is coming. Or like, I'm there, like emotionally. And I can do CPR, and I've done all that stuff too. But I asked, okay, well, what is that job? So I got onto Google, and I just typed in emotional support at death, and I pressed return, and what came up was this paid death doula, living well, dying well, death doula training. And I went to the website, and I was like, that's what I'm doing. I'm a death doula. Like, so I signed
Yeah.
up to the course right then and there, and I did the training, became a death doula. And I thought that maybe these uncanny coincidences or these synchronicities would stop, but they haven't stopped. I still get them several times a year all over the world. Doesn't matter where I am. If it's Margate, if I'm in Mexico City, I'm still, these things happen where I'm there when something
Yeah,
happens.
you know what? I'm like that too. I lead a very strange and uncanny life, but I think I haven't found my purpose yet, but yeah, I have a very, I can relate to that story.
So now, yeah, you just listen to it. And
Yeah.
then you step into it with purpose. So even though it still happens, I don't feel like I have a stigma around it. I'm like, okay, universe, you put me in this place, the right time at the right place to help this person. So now I can step into it with knowing. In fact, it gets really trippy with it now. I'll give you an example. I was on my way to London last year at one point, last spring, and I was on a train, crowded train, and I'm sitting there on the crowded train, and I get a real strong prompt from, you can call it what, the
Oh,
universe. Yeah. get a very strong prompt, get out of this car, this train car, and go into the next one. And I'm like, what? It's so crowded though. Like, I'm good here. No, trust me, go do it. And I always listen to it. So I got up, went to the next car, and it's packed, but there is a seat beside this person. So I sat in it. It's an aisle seat. Okay, I'm here. I don't know why you put me here, but I'm here. About 10 minutes later into the movement of the train, this man walks by. So he walks by, I don't really think anything of it. And then all of a sudden hear like a kerfuffle, sort of like a stumbling kind of kerfuffle. And I kind of peer over, and this man stumbles and collapses against the train door, clutching his chest. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, this is why I was called into this train, this car. So I go over there. So it's me and the train ticket collector help this guy. And this guy is having a heart attack, which is a bit different from cardiac arrest. Like, so that one man that I was on Broadway Market, it was fatal. So like his heart, it was gone, like he literally was dying within a matter of 3 minutes. But this guy was having a heart attack. So with a heart attack, you can continue to living. Your heart is freaking out, and it's very, very painful, but it's still salvageable. You don't necessarily die on the spot. You need medical support. So I'm there with this guy. The ticket conductor gets onto the phone. Is there a doctor on board? We need a doctor in this car. And then the doctor comes, and I'm still holding this guy's hand and trying to help him. I'm like, it's okay, help some, giving him some supportive words. And then a passenger doctor comes, and it's very identified that it's heart attack. And then, the emergency services are called for the next stop. So the next stop comes, so I get off the train at Stratford with this man having a heart attack. We immediately sit down, and I'm like, just look at my eyes, it's okay, help is coming, just there to kind of soothe him. And it was great because the paramedics were there really quick. So within like arriving, they identified the guy, they came over and they took, they went and gave him the support. But that's just an example of, the work continuing, but now on a different level where like, I'll get the message, spirit will come in and say, yo, get to the other car now. And I'm like, all right, and I go over there. I've had it so many times. I've had it before where I'm in the tube and it's like, spirit's like, go down and stand at the very end of the platform, right? And then I go listen, and I go do it. And, it always is there. So
it's become clear to me that it's important, for whatever reasons, that you don't fear when you're about to die, and that you're at peace. And I've also realized that fear is basically not really what you want to be doing. It's anathema. And I've also basically realized that there's fear and love, and that is basically not that is all there is, but in one sense of the world, that is what there is.
oh yeah, seriously, I completely agree with you. I think that is the core foundation of what human beings grapple with. That is our eternal primordial angst, is the dichotomy of being caught between fear and love. If you're to melt everything down to the core of
100%.
what human struggle is, it's between fear and love. And you can apply that to everything, even the political situation that's going on right now in the world, in the Middle East. Are you going to move through it with fear, which fear creates more fear, begets more fear, more hurt, more violence, more death, more pain, more trauma? Or are you going to move into it through love, which is compassion, empathy, freedom, lack of, there's no oppression. Everyone
And
is like,
inspiration. Love is also, when I'm in love, or I feel love, I feel inspired. I feel like myself. So, it's a lot of different things, isn't it?
yeah, totally. And that's why I look at conspiracy through the lens of like, well, is this rooted in fear or love? And
Such a
if
good
some,
point. Yeah, such a good point.
I do like
Um,
to entertain like what is really going on? What is really going on? But
yeah.
But don't let it like imprison you or make you fearful or make you like hate other people, or I don't know, maybe there's just something there.
Do you feel like you are, I mean, I read your bio, but do you feel like you are psychic, or should I say, how does that psychicness manifest? Do you see people with people? And I mean, I spoke to another spiritual healer, and he said, you know, there's someone with you, and that person was with me. It was very personal to me. But yeah, how does it manifest for you?
So I think we are all very sensitive sensory beings. We
Yeah.
all have the ability to sense things beyond our ordinary sense of consciousness. I do hold the idea of that there are exceptional experiences of consciousness, and some people are able to sense beyond the boundaries of what our modern construct of science would say is achievable. And that is just, to me, it's scientific. I don't feel there's anything supernatural about having um, uh, uh, psychism, like being able to sense things, sense energy, to sense a person's past, to sense someone's trauma, to get information about a person in a very different kind of way. I think it's completely normal. I don't think it's supernatural. I think it's absolutely natural. We, as human beings, don't probably even work within our full potential. I think we all have full potential to be sensory, sensing, psychic beings, 100%. Now, part of that zone of psychism can be like retrieving or sensing information from a person by going into, you know, a slightly altered state. It could be a meditative state or a trance-like state. It's basically slowing your brain waves down to be able to sense beyond a chattering mind. And part of that too can be able to sense people who have died. You know, that's the realms of mediumship. The medium sits on the threshold of you know, of two worlds, into, you know, a material reality and perhaps a sensory or mystical reality. That's where the shaman sits. That's where the seer or the witch sits. You know, the wizard. You could use so many different words for it, but it's just basically who's able to go into both places. And so with a medium, you know, you're right on that, you know, threshold state where you're able to perceive or receive information from, you know, someone who's died. And sometimes the information is really succinct, you know, and they might give you their name. They might say, you know, some inside joke, something that's only relevant to the person that you're talking to. So, you know, how does that work? You know, you could like look at it and be skeptical and go, well, you know, the name Walter is very common, and so how could, you know, you know, it's probably just a coincidence. Or you could say, yeah, but everyone has a grandpa who died, you know, and you know, has gray hair or a mustache,
The
or you
way
know.
he spoke to me, I felt like he knew exactly. But you know, it's a personal I don't even need it to be real for someone else, you know, and you know what I mean. Yeah. Um,
Exactly. I think it holds value. I think it can be transpersonal and helpful, but I do have an ethical code and stance on it, because some people do exploit the grief of others and say, you know, and make money off of like, you know, people's grief. So, you know, it can get sinister. Of course, there's going to be people out there who are, you know, you know, like fakes or charlatans or whatever, snake oil salesmen who are gonna, yeah, I'm gonna contact you, you know, your lost loved one and give you messages. And so of course it can have its, you know, bad side to it, right? Like anything.
yeah. Thank you so much for speaking to me. It's been a real pleasure. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, and I feel like perhaps I will talk to you again in the future. So it was lovely to speak to you, and hopefully I will see you again.
Yes, Eddie, it was great. And thank you for the conversation.